Hi everyone, Yasaskia Kalosirtate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I'm going to teach you how to make chocolate hazelnut cake slices. These are so delicious. It's going to be 2 layers of moist chocolate cake that's going to be filled with a Nutella or whatever your favorite chocolate hazelnut spread is on the inside, along with a Nutella or chocolate hazelnut buttercream that's going to be creamy and delicious. It's so good. Beautiful to look at, delicious to eat. Let's get started. So we're going to start off by making the chocolate cake layers. Okay, so we're going to start with the wet ingredients, and in here I have 3 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. You can use dark if you want. To that, you can add 1.5 cups of already prepared coffee if you have it left over. Just heat it up so that way you can melt the chocolate. But since I don't have leftover coffee because I drink Greek coffee in the morning, I'll add a heaping teaspoon of instant coffee and then 1.5 cups of water. Mix it all up, and this is going to melt the chocolate, and just set it aside so it can cool a little bit while you prepare the rest of the ingredients. Now for the dry ingredients, I have 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of cocoa powder, and then to that I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of salt. And then just whisk that all up. For the remaining wet ingredients, I have 3 cups of granulated sugar. I'm going to add 3/4 cup of vegetable oil. This is a light olive oil. 3 eggs that are at room temperature. 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And then just go ahead and mix that all up. Next, we're going to add 1 cup of plain yogurt. 2 teaspoons of baking soda. This is what makes the cake really soft. 1/2 cup of milk. Just mix that all up. Add the chocolate and coffee mixture. And now just add the dry ingredients a little bit at a time until it's all combined. Okay, then you want to line 2 half-sheet baking trays with parchment paper. The exact measurements of these trays are going to be on the recipe card, so I don't remember exactly how big they are. Spray the parchment paper with some cooking spray, or you could brush it with olive oil or butter, and then go ahead and distribute the batter evenly between the 2 pans. I like to use a big ice cream scoop for this, and it's usually about 10 scoops per pan. And then go ahead and spread the batter out evenly. It looks like a thin layer, but it's going to rise, so don't worry. It's going to be the perfect thickness. Once you're done making the cake, you want to make sure that the oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The cake that's going to be on the upper part of the oven is going to be done first at around 22 minutes, so check it. And then the second one's going to take a few extra minutes, but about 25 minutes total is all you need. Once they come out of the oven, let them cool completely. And then before we assemble the pastry slices, you're going to want to freeze the cake layers well. So once the cake layers cool completely, go ahead and transfer them onto some plastic wrap and then remove the parchment paper that's on the back side of the cake. Wrap the cakes with plastic, put them on a baking tray, and put parchment paper in between so the plastic doesn't stick, and freeze these well. This cake can be frozen 2 to 3 months and it'll still taste so fresh as long as it's wrapped properly in plastic wrap. Right before you're ready to use it, you want to keep it frozen, don't thaw it out. So make this ahead of time and have it on hand so that you can make this dessert anytime you crave it. So next we're going to go on and we're going to make the pastry cream. Even though we're not going to have pastry cream inside of the cake, it's going to be in the buttercream, and I am still going to go ahead and make a double batch of this. I'll leave it up to you if you want to fill the inside of the cake with the pastry cream, or if you want to use it all for the buttercream and then leave some in the fridge to snack on with some berries. It is to die for. It's basically a thick vanilla pudding. So in a saucepan, you want to add 4 cups of whole milk along with 1 cup of granulated sugar and a little pinch of salt. The sugar really helps the milk, it keeps the milk from sticking to the pan and burning. In another little mixing bowl, add the 1/2 cup of granulated sugar with 8 egg yolks, half a cup of heavy whipping cream, and 8 tablespoons or half a cup of cornstarch. Whisk that all together until it's nice and smooth. And once the milk is steaming hot, add it to the eggs, to the egg mixture, and whisk it all together so that way you can raise the temperature of the eggs. And then we're going to add everything back into the saucepan and we're going to bring it to a boil. We're going to keep stirring this while it's heating so that way it doesn't burn. And as soon as it starts to boil, you're going to see that it's going to thicken. Take it off of the heat and stir in 3 to 4 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. Transfer it to a big bowl and cover it with some plastic wrap so that way it doesn't form a skin on top, and let it cool completely. You can refrigerate it at this point for 2 to 3 days so you can make the pastry cream well in advance, and that way you don't have to do this all on the same day. And I do recommend that you don't try to do this all on the same day. It's too much work. Next, we're going to move on to making the syrup, the simple syrup. All good bakery cakes are drenched, usually drenched in a lot of simple syrup, or they get a nice little brushing of it. It's the secret that makes bakery cakes so moist, so don't skip this step. I'm making a coffee syrup because it goes really good with chocolate cake, but you can definitely do this with just plain vanilla. So in a saucepan, you want to add 1 cup of granulated sugar, 1 cup of water, and 1 to 2 teaspoons of instant coffee. Whisk that all together and bring it to a boil. Once the sugar dissolves, take it off of the heat and add in 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and set it aside to cool completely. You can transfer this into a little mason jar and keep it refrigerated up to a week, and you could do this step ahead of time too. Next, we're going to make the Nutella buttercream. It's so creamy and so delicious. This tastes just like a French buttercream, except there are no raw eggs in it. Instead, we're going to use the pastry cream that we made. So you want to make sure if you made the pastry cream ahead of time and it was refrigerated, go ahead and whisk that up to break it up and make it a little smooth. And also either pop it in the microwave so it can come to room temperature. You don't want it to be hot and you don't want it to be cold. You want it to be room temperature. Hot pastry cream will melt the butter and then you'll have an oily, greasy mess on your hand. And cold pastry cream will make the butter seize up and harden, and your buttercream won't be smooth, which is how we want it to be. So let the pastry cream come to room temperature. If you don't want to put it in the microwave, you could put the bowl in another big bowl of warm water and keep switching that water out until the pastry cream comes to room temperature. So in a big mixing bowl, you want to add 1 pound of unsalted butter that is soft and at room temperature, with a little pinch of salt and 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. I like to do this with a whisk attachment and my KitchenAid mixer. Mix that all together until the butter is broken up and nice and smooth. Then go ahead and add 1 cup of confectioner sugar and beat that until it's nice and fluffy. Also scrape down the sides of the bowl so everything mixes evenly. Then you're going to want to add half of the pastry cream into the butter while the mixer is mixing. Just add a little bit at a time. That's about 3 or 4 scoops if you're using big ice cream scoops. Mix that on high speed, scraping down the sides of the bowl until the buttercream is nice and soft and fluffy. Okay, so now it's time to assemble the chocolate hazelnut cake, and make sure that you slice the cake or you divide the cake into 2 equal layers. Make sure that the cake is still frozen or at least chilled, otherwise it's going to fall apart on you while you're assembling it. It's a very sticky cake. As you can see, it's really moist. I'm working on the back of a half-sheet baking pan with a piece of parchment paper on top of that. So the first cake layer is on. I'm just going to brush it generously with this coffee syrup that we made. Okay, so I put the chocolate hazelnut buttercream in this pastry bag that's fitted with an open star, large star attachment. The measurements and links are going to be on the blog post. So I'm just going to pipe a border of frosting all around the border of the cake. This is going to help keep everything in place. And it's a great way to level out the cake. If one side is a little bit thicker than the other, you can put more frosting on that side, on the thinner side. Next, I'm just going to spread some of this chocolate hazelnut spread onto the cake. Make sure you put enough on there. If you don't put enough, then it's gonna lift up the crumbs, and you're gonna get crumbs all over your chocolate hazelnut spread. Now you can put strawberries on top of this because strawberries and Nutella go so well together. Then a layer of the buttercream. Now you do have half of the pastry cream left, and you can do a layer of pastry cream if you want to lighten up the chocolate flavor instead of the buttercream on top of here. That's also an option. It's going to taste delicious, especially if you do pastry cream with the Nutella and the strawberries. That's going to taste like a crepe. Okay, so now my cake has thawed out a little too much, and you're going to see that it is breaking and falling apart, but don't worry, we're going to cover this up with icing. That's why it's important to make sure that it's chilled in the freezer. The more frozen it is, the easier it's going to be to work with. I'm going to brush this with the coffee syrup. Concentrate on the edges because the edges of cake tend to be a little more dry than the center. Then you can just frost the side of the cake either using the pastry bag. It makes it so easy, like I'm doing over here. If you see that the frosting starts to fall over, keep an icing spatula handy. Let me get mine, it's right here. And you could just spread it and stick it on. But if you pipe really close to the cake, it's gonna stay on. Otherwise, you could use an offset spatula and just pipe the frosting on there, or don't pipe it, spread it on there. Then go ahead and spread icing on the top of the cake and smooth out the sides. Just kind of press them in there. If it has some extra swirls on it, don't worry about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. These are going to turn into individual slices. Now, I already put some Nutella in a plastic piping bag. Then I just snipped the tip off with a scissors so we could have a little exit for the Nutella to come out of. And I'm just gonna swirl little lines. I'm not swirling, I'm just gonna make little diagonal lines all across the cake. It's gonna create a nice decoration. You could do this in a Ziploc bag, or you can melt the Nutella in the microwave, warm it a little bit, and then just use a knife or a spoon to just make little swirls on top. So I'm just gonna pop this in the freezer to set for about 15 minutes while I clean up a little bit. I'm gonna transfer the leftover Nutella buttercream into the pastry bag, the big pastry bag that has the star tip attachment. Then once everything is done, we're gonna cut it into slices and put the final little decorating touches on each slice. So you can cut the slices whatever size you like. I'm gonna cut them a little bit on the larger side, so they're full portion sizes, but you can serve these even smaller than this because they are very rich. So you can do little squares instead of rectangles. I'm gonna cut the shorter sides of the cake to 4 inches because it's 8 inches on the short side. And each time you slice, make sure that you clean the knife with a damp paper towel. And then the longer side, I'm gonna cut to 2-inch increments. It's 12 inches. And I'm not gonna cut all the way down. I'm just gonna mark it so that way I can do both sides without having to clean the knife. If the slices are sticking, then go ahead and wet the knife or run the knife under really hot water, and then it'll slice through much easier. Then I just order a package of these large cupcake liners. I get them from Amazon, but the supermarkets have them and cake decorating supply stores also have them. It's just an easy way to serve them. And those look good just like that, but I'm gonna pipe a little swirl, a little rosette right on the top back end of each slice. And I also have these strawberries that I cut in half. I'm gonna put those on top. You can do blueberries, raspberries, or a nice combination. So if you're not serving all of the slices, these freeze beautifully. You can pipe the rosettes on top, but skip the berries because once you freeze berries, then they become watery once they thaw out. Put this tray back in the freezer, and once they're frozen solid, transfer the slices into either a freezer-safe container or onto another tray and then wrap them tightly with plastic wrap. This will keep fresh frozen for like 2 months. Then whenever you want to serve them, you can take a slice or two, all of them out, leave them on the countertop, and they will thaw out in like 30 minutes. Or if you know you're serving them the next day, you can thaw them out overnight in the refrigerator. A great dessert to have on hand. It is a lot of effort, but it is worth every second. I'm going to freeze these, clean up a little bit, and then we're going to move on to the taste test. The cake is super moist. The little layer of Nutella that's in between the buttercream makes it taste really fudgy, and it's so nice. The cream, the buttercream, is silky and smooth, and it's not overly buttery or overly sweet. It is delicious and decadent and just the way a good chocolate cake should be. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. If you want to print this out with the exact measurements, head on over to the website, www.dimitrasdishes.com. If you want to learn how to make more chocolate cakes, click over here and I will see you right over there. Yes, Sass?